Good evening and welcome to our Rural Support and Wellbeing webinar this evening. Tonight's topic is animal feed at ports and feed hygiene and registration. We have some lovely speakers who have kindly agreed to talk this evening. I do need to do the disclaimer though, probably. So if anybody would not like their details shared, or they want to say something that they do not want recorded, then please just get in contact with myself or Sam on the email address or phone number that's provided, and we can make sure that it is omitted from the recording. Okay, so this evening, tonight's speakers, we have, we've gone to any questions. This evening we have Richard Fruin, is that how you say your name, hopefully?
It is.
He's the operations manager for the Associated British Ports at Teignmouth. And we have Rebecca Langdon and Naomi Osborne from Heart of the Southwest Trading Standards. Okay, Richard, if you are happy to share your screen, then we would love to hear your presentation.
Yes, okay. Here we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes, great.
So thank you for the introduction. So my name is Richard Fruin. I'm the operations manager at and the port facility security officer at Associated British Ports in Teignmouth. So it's really, this presentation is just a general sort of presentation about the port, and there's a bit about the products we do and the things we need to do to enable us to keep those particular products and our licenses to trade. Okay. So just to give you a little bit about ABP itself. So ABP, very large company, employs about 2,000 odd people. Key statistics of the tonnage, we roughly move about 600,000 units throughout ABP every year. 1,300 or 1.3 million, container units every year, 19.6 million tons of liquid bulks, energy bulks, 1.1 million vehicles. So you might see them in Southampton, all lined up, ready to go on the vehicle movers and ships. 3.6 million tons of agri-bulks, so that's the area that the Teignmouth are within. Forest products, 2.1 million tons of products are moved throughout our ports, and 11.5 million tons of construction materials. So Associated British Ports, we've got 21 ports around the country, and obviously we're down in Teignmouth here at the moment, and the other one in the southwest is Plymouth, which that deals with the ferries, Brittany Ferries. So you might go on holiday over to Roscoff or Santander down that way. So ports of Teignmouth is what we're interested in. So here we are coming into Teignmouth. We got the Ness in front, and then the river mouth coming in, and then the ports coming around on the right hand side of the picture. So just a bit of history. So the port was first known in the 1300s. Used to bring in or deal with salt and fish trade, and we also sent 7 vessels out from Teignmouth to fight the French in Calais. In the 1700s, we exported local granite and clay, and then in the 1800s, the new quay was built down in Teignmouth to export Dartmoor granite, which actually part of it was sent up to London Bridge, so to help construct that. And then in 1889, this is where it sort of all began for the Teignmouth Quay Company, and that's when it was formed. World War One went into depression, and the quays were left derelict. And then in 1932, it really started. The trade started getting going again with coal, clay, and granite, and 90,000 tons. That's actually, it was a good tonnage for then, and we've still got the records now, which you can see the amount of products that were coming in, and also the amount of ships. But yeah, if we go over to now, it's 1979, the port was taken over privately, and then in 1988, ABP, Associated British Ports, bought Teignmouth Quay Company. That is the original document. So that's where it all started. So we only found this the other day, by the way. So this was the conveyance document, which transferred the land from a Mr. Talbot to the Teignmouth Quay Company. So and that's the original map as well, back from 1889. So really sort of key document. You might know that you might have done it the Temple Way. So a really lovely walk. And obviously it follows the Stover Canal down where the granite used to come down from, and then the clay as well down the Stover Canal. This is where I start thinking about health and safety. Health and safety is a massive one in the port. You know, it's a dangerous industry, and we've got to make sure that people stay safe. But here I'm looking at working at height, manual handling. There's all sorts of things you can start seeing in these pictures. Again, this is the big ramp. That part of the quay is still there, but the reason it's called the big ramp is because of this ramp that the lorries used to tip probably clay into. Again, that wouldn't be allowed these days. It was just too hazardous. Again, bricks from Belgium. Well, smoking around hay. Got working at height again. So again, I'm starting looking at health and safety and where will we be now with this, and will we be allowed to sort of operate like this? And the answer to that is probably not. This is where I start getting into the agricultural bit, importing potatoes, weirdly, into Devon in the 1950s. And then, of course, coal. Coal was a big one in Teignmouth. But yeah, in 1967, it was scheduled for closure because they built a new depot in Exmouth. But the line was actually severed in 1970. But you can actually see the signal box down on your left-hand side there, which I suppose now is where our office is, and also our car park. For those who've been down there, you can see the railway line there with the coal. And that's the main London to Penzance line. So yeah, I don't know if anyone's seen this picture. This is the old elephant we used to use to move the carriages around, and that actually lasted in the Teignmouth Quay Company for 32 years. So we still try and look after our equipment to this day, because it's we buy all the equipment. It's important that we make sure that it's all everything's all greased and maintained and kept well. But 32 years, I'm not sure if we could make any plant last that long now. I'll skip through those, and that's it now. So the elephant is now in, as it's known, is now in Holland, all restored. It'd be nice if it made a trip back over here one day. And this is what really got me into shipping. In the 1970s, it could have been me sat there fishing, watching the ships coming in and out. Of course, the port was open in those days. And you could come in and watch the ships, but I just found it fascinating, and that's really what got me into the interest of shipping and the movement of goods throughout the world. This is the 1960s now. Again, on the right of the picture, there's a white building. That was the old pub, which was the old mess room, and on the left-hand side of that picture is the old customs house, which is actually now Teignmouth Brewery, so that's still there with us. And there's the old inn, the old quay inn that got demolished. Apparently it was a sad day for the dockers, because that was their mess room back in the day, when they used to probably have a few bitters before they went out and worked. But obviously we're not allowed to do that these days with random drug and alcohol testing. But back then, I think the days were a little bit different. And you can see now the quays are getting changed. They're looking at bigger coasters coming in, bringing in animal feed, and remaining competitive with other ports like Plymouth and Bristol, and realising that ships getting bigger and wider with more draft. So they started extending the quay out and filling in, obviously, these areas in the middle here, the little inlets where the small coasters used to sit. 2005. This is now what we're sort of looking at, sort of towards modern day now. Obviously, the offices have gone up now, and 2006 it was completed, and that's actually now. So this is sort of modern day now. So All of these sheds, actually, I can show you. These down here are all animal feed. So majority of stuff that we bring in now is animal feed. We've got a small bit of clay in a couple of the sheds, but the rest is all animal feed that we store for, and send out for the customer. So our ports here, we contribute to the local economy of 11 million, and ABP ports in the southwest contribute 100 million to the economy every year. So even though we're a small employer in Teignmouth, it's obviously a big area, but the farms that we're connected to, the mills, the haulage companies, it employs and supports a lot of jobs in the area, and obviously a lot of families. So you know, it's quite a it's a great thing to be part of, and we also meet a lot of good people as well. So as I said, here is mainly animal feed. On the import side, we only really export clay from the clay pits behind us in Newton Abbot through Spelco. Salt also, that goes out for animal feed and tanning of hides and skins, but mostly animal feed. Like we like salt in our food, the animals like salt in theirs. So that goes out as well. Cruise ships, bit loose, blast furnace slag from Port Talbot, and obviously with the steel making process, that's going to have to be sourced from another location in the world, probably. Stone, and one of the particular things I enjoy doing here is the project cargo. So, for instance, stuff like transformers. I think the Exeter incinerator came through Teignmouth Port, and we were also involved with the Seawall project back in 2014 when we had that big storm. So future-proofing the port, it's really important that you know, we sort of maintain competitiveness within the market, and by doing that, it's important that we keep the channel dredged. We had a major dredge about 8 years ago now, which took well, it went down to 1.5 meters below chart datum in the river. It's currently about a meter. But obviously we need to maintain that depth to allow these vessels to come in, which we try and mark with the Spelco vessels, clay vessels, around 4,000 tons. But obviously with the winds, global warming, and more southerly swells coming in, it's obviously a challenge, as with most sort of areas around the coastline. So the Teignmouth Harbour Commission have got a new pilot boat arriving at the end of this month, which you'll be able to see. We've got new plants and equipment. We've just had a new loading shovel, so that's worth about £220,000 investment. New Manson material handler we've had, and we're looking at another one maybe this year or next year to come and work in the port. So we're continuously trying to sort of drive change. And obviously we're training staff and obviously looking at the environmental side of things as well, which I can go into later. I mentioned about dredging. So Teignmouth, pre-COVID levels, we're probably around about 450,000 tons a year. That particular ship there, I think it looks like it's Sunfire pellets that they're discharging, probably from Europe. And you can see the chap down in the bottom there, right-hand corner. He's there, what they call trimming up the vessel. So they'll use a bobcat and a sweeper to trim the vessel after the crane's been through it. We probably know about the market shocks and geopolitical factors affecting us. Obviously, we've had COVID-19 with the downturn of trade and production, which had an effect on us directly here, and probably still does, to be honest with you, within the port. The war in Ukraine has affected us with fuel prices, and also a lot of the raw material for animal feed, so the whole product, say for instance sunflower seeds, rape, which is crushed for its oil. A lot of that came out of Ukraine, but obviously with the issues with the Black Sea, it's caused issues with logistics. So a lot of that now is coming over via rail into Europe, but obviously the amounts aren't so much. And I think the costs have been there's sort of I think there's been an issue with how much animal feed is costing now, with production and moving within Europe. And I think the Ukraine sort of animal feed has dropped quite considerably in price as well, which is causing a little bit of a price war, I think, in within Europe with animal feed. Energy prices I mentioned, inflation. We had French strikes last year, which caused a bottleneck in shipping as well. Ships were actually really difficult to find last year to transport our goods into our ports. And then, of course, the war in Israel at the moment with Hamas, sadly, and that's caused problems within in the seas around there and the Red Sea, and with the attacks with the Houthi rebels and stuff like that. So a lot of the transport now is having to come around Africa and into our ports around that way, which obviously is affecting costs and bringing up costs, which affects the end user eventually, because they can't come through the Suez Canal. Compliance, this is a big one, and it's probably where you guys come into it as well, with our licenses to trade. This is a selection of some of solar panels we've got up now. We've actually got more than this now, to be honest with you. But where were we a number of years ago? Well, this is back from 1985 with our compliance. You can see here at the bottom, badly bruised, with lacerations to the body, shocked, also right foot, toes fractured. And this chap was taken to hospital by an ambulance. He was actually okay in the end, but now, you know, we're looking at 0 reportables, you know, and all of these would be very much dug into and looked at while we're having these accidents. But to be honest with you, a lot of these, well, they'd all be unacceptable now. So here we are, modern day. This is what we've got to wear now: 5 points of PPE, hard hat, glasses, protective boots, gloves, and also we're looking at the culture. So this is a massive thing. We were very much system based. We are still system based with risk assessment, safe systems of work, and all the foundational stuff. But it's also looking at the culture, how we speak to each other about health and safety, how we need to look after each other, you know, to enable us all to go home and back to our families. We're a small community here, and most ports are a small community. And, you know, it's really important that we stay safe and we're able to communicate and discuss about health and safety and feel comfortable with it. We do that through spot-its, reporting things we see, and we encourage this with our staff, things that have happened, so we can spread this amongst our ports to enable us to put things in, unpeel the onion to see what's happened, so we can share this good practice with other ports to ensure that that we don't have any reportable accidents or injuries or serious incidents. You know, since we started looking at the culture, the accident rate it's dropped considerably, and we're, you know, touch wood, very healthy with it. So we'll continue to do that. So just out of interest, I know probably you're all on mute, but here's something that the crane driver spotted on a blast furnace slag vessel. And they were there. They just completed with this big Hoover they've got. They've gone down with a grab. They've all got the license to stop work immediately if they see something unsafe. They'll never be challenged on that. And what did they see down there? But they saw this worker, crew member, down there with a white overalls on, paper suit, cleaning out the little cleats, to clean the hold out with a blast furnace slag from Port Talbot. Nobody knew he was down there, not even the captain. So the job was stopped. It was reported. And I think everyone was just as shocked as I was when I looked at the picture. But so these are the things we've got to look out for all the time. As I mentioned, ship's crew, a lot of work's been done with that to ensure safety. They all have to sign these ship's guidelines, which takes them through security, bunkering, anything to do with shipping while they're here. So health and safety, So there's a lot of stuff in there to read. They sign it off before they oh, and ballast water as well. So that's all signed off and agreed before anything happens with that. So that's all in our guidelines that are signed off by the captain. Somebody asked me the other day, where does all the money go from ABP? What do we invest in? Well, at the moment, a massive, eye-watering sum is being invested by ABP, an amount of 2 billion, and this is ABP committing to a net zero by 2040. So within our port, we've gone to LED lighting. We're looking at we'll be looking at electric vehicles, probably electric cranes in the future. Solar panels, solar energy is a big one. But in other ports, we're looking at investing in wind farms, offshore wind farms, electric cranes, and also shore-to-ship electric supply. So with the generators going on these ships, they won't have to do that with the shore electric. So these are all the things that ABP are looking at the moment and are absolutely committed to. So if anyone wants any more information on that, please get in touch. So animal feed, which yourselves are part of. So it's part of the food chain. We have to treat it like food here. And the biggest thing, sort of, I suppose, with us, with the animal feed, is traceability and keeping the animal feed in a a quality sort of way, so it's well kept. So we work underneath the trade assurance called TASC, and that's the UK trade assurance. So there's lots of things that we have to do to enable us to get this assurance for us to trade in animal feed. And everybody that works with animal feed in the UK, whether they store it, transport it, they're a haulier, have to be registered to the TASC scheme. There's a couple of others down there, UFAS as well, that you can be registered to. The governing body for this is the Grain and Feed Trade Association. So it doesn't matter where it comes from in the world. It's got to be tracked from the farm it was grown to the lorry it went on, to the store it was stored in, to the ship it went on, to obviously us here, cleaning regimes, to the lorry it went on, and then to the farmer, to the animal. So if there is any problems like foot and mouth or all these other things, then salmonella, then these can be traced back right to the very start, back to the farm it came from. So any issues within that food chain. So what's our responsibilities here? We've got to obviously keep records, all the cleaning records. We need to have a certain shed construction. We need to demonstrate every year that we're giving our personnel training, including facilities and hygiene to keep themselves clean. We need risk assessments of all the procedures that we do here, security of the feed to make sure there's no contamination, internal and external auditing. Again, part of that is the trading standards. Product recall and traceability, so if they find any glass or any contaminants within the animal feed, we can recall it and we can trace it back to where it came from and identify the areas where the contamination might have happened. Monitoring action, vermin control, always a challenging one, sampling and testing, and vehicle checks. Every vehicle that comes in has to be checked. And you might notice, so here's an Evans lorry, we see these on the roads, and you'll notice a TASC sticker down here. Every vehicle that carries animal feed has to have a TASC sticker, and they have to be registered to TASC. Also within their responsibilities, they've got to keep their vehicles cleaned, washed, and also they have to produce what last 3 loads they had in that particular lorry, because if they have certain products in their lorry, they're not allowed to transport that particular feed. So stuff like bitumen and stuff like that, they would be stopped from carrying any animal feed in that lorry whatsoever. So we carry a big list of they call forbidden products. Security, Again, I mentioned security, but obviously a big one in the port. We get ships coming in, we'll look at hostile reconnaissance. I'll be honest with you, in Teignmouth, there's usually antisocial behaviour, people on the port, safety, and this is done by 39 cameras throughout the port. I'd rather this one that shot be kept off of the presentation if I could. And probably that shot there. But part of what we have to do is do an exercise every year to exercise our port security plan. This particular exercise was with Devon and Cornwall Police, one of our dockers who played the villain, and the local ambulance and fire service. So that was an exercise we did this year, which went really well actually. And we are really well supported by counter-terrorism, Devon and Cornwall Police, the Home Office, Teignmouth Harbour Commission, Department for Transport, and of course Border Force. So I'm sure, well, you might have been on some sort of courses, but you can log on to the government website and you can complete some Act Awareness course if you're interested in sort of how to be aware of I don't know whether it's suspicious people or people doing hostile reconnaissance, or just what things to look out for, organised crime and stuff like that. Along the coastline, it's supported by Project Kraken. So it's like Crime Stoppers. You can call a number and it'll go through and you can report any crime you see along the coast. So I think a couple of years ago, you might have heard about the Sea Crystal that came in at Shellcove between Teignmouth and Dawlish. So they're the kind of things that we're sort of looking at. And for our port and ABP, we work with PortSafe. Again, it's like a Crime Stoppers, but deals with sort of ports internally. So we're looking at sort of internal crime, insider threats and stuff like that. So that's another area that we've got to demonstrate that that we have got the certain things in place, and we're working towards what the Department for Transport require. And then community engagement, which is probably what we're doing here as well, a bit of community engagement. So we give a donation every year of £500 to a local charity. If the guys have had 0 reportable accidents for the year. I think the picture on the left was with the Teignmouth Surf Lifesaving Club. We did a beach clean this year along the beaches out from the Tean, going up towards the Babbacombe area. And there's just a few shots of what we've done with Sheldon School, and we did Port Wall and Bicton College. Bobby Tracy Heritage, and we did Teignmouth Heritage the other day as well. So we try and do a lot within the community and community engagement, and try not to have shut doors, and show everyone what we do, and celebrate what we do. And that's it. If anyone's got any questions.
Amazing. Thanks ever so much, Richard. I really appreciate you taking your time to give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour of history and also the current situations at the local port in Teignmouth. That's really great. I don't know if there's no questions in the chat, but I can't imagine that our lovely people on the call won't have a question. And Rebecca, there she is.
I go to the port every year, so I kind of know a lot of what goes on there. But I just wondered, Richard, how many people do you actually employ on the port? Because there's quite a lot of people that are around there, isn't there, at the time?
Yeah, so we got 19 people at the moment in the port. We're a couple short at the moment. In fact, we got one up. We're recruiting for one person at the moment, but we've usually got 19 people who work here, and that includes 14 of those are port operatives.
I've got to say, safety is always paramount, and we always feel very safe when we're there. We go through the procedure with you, but when we're out on the dock, we just do exactly what you say. And with the new, we're quite impressed by those new walkways that you've got now, and the red and go stop signs and stuff. It's really, you do feel safe when you're there, as long as you follow exactly what you've been told to do. So it's always appreciated that you do look after us.
Ports are a dangerous place. It's the trade we're in, and it used to be led by the operation because that's what earns us the money. But certainly now everything starts with health and safety, everything, and the environment as well, because we're in a small town, and we've got responsibility with our neighbours, and people in the town as well. So health and safety and the environment are at the top of the agenda of everything we do. Before the operation comes in, but the number one goal is everyone goes home safe every day. And that's the most important thing, including the visitors that we have coming to see us.
The Project Cargo, what was that? I didn't quite understand. That sounded quite interesting.
So Project Cargo is sort of abnormal loads. So it could be like a 250, 300 ton piece of equipment that's going to, I don't know, some sort of construction in Exeter or locally where they can't put it, down the motorway. So it's usually something that's sort of a bit abnormal, can't fit on a road, or it's too heavy for a road for long distances. Could be an electric transformer. So it could be the fact, I don't know, that Southern Electric or Western Power want to bring in a new big transformer of, I don't know, 250 tons. And that will then hopefully would be able to come through Teignmouth, and then that will be transported up to Exeter at the shortest route. So, but it's something that we don't do a lot of here, but it's something that I really enjoy doing, because it's just something a bit different. It's always some sort of big engineering project within the Southwest, and it's really nice to think actually I've had some involvement with that.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
There's just a question in the chat, Richard, from Julie, just asking, how often do you have to deal with feed safety incidents at the port?
So I'll be honest with you, not too much with feed safety. So one thing that we do have to deal with here, so part of what we have to do is salmonella checks. I think we have one incident with that. That's probably in the 13 years I've been here. So the feed had to be treated. The biggest problem we get here probably is heating cargo, and it doesn't really affect the feed. It's probably more of a danger to the infrastructure, because like anything that's moist and compact, it starts getting hot, like your compost, and it can sort of get to a heat or temperature where it can self-combust. So we have to go up and do temperature checks every week to ensure that the temperatures are sort of a minimal or sort of a level that's acceptable. So that's probably the biggest hazard that we've got with the animal feed, is it heating. So it's really important that animal feed turns over. But remember, it goes through a lot of checks right from the very start of production before it even gets to us. So touch wood, we shouldn't have really anything here. But we've still got to demonstrate that we have all those checks in place to ensure that, nothing does happen.
Excellent, thank you. I hope that's okay, Julie, and that gives you what you were after. I was just wondering how far's the furthest lot that the feed comes from, because obviously I know it comes in from lots of different places, but I was just wondering where is the furthest that it comes, really?
Probably from the Baltic area, probably the furthest it comes from.
Yeah.
I mean, with clay, we export to Casablanca and Alexandria. That's over in Egypt, but that's probably the furthest we go with clay. But I'd imagine that the probably the furthest it comes in from is from sort of the Baltic areas and the Black Sea. We were bringing in Hi-Pro soya. It's actually really expensive, but it's how the animals get their protein. Hi-Pro soya is that comes in sort of big ships in from obviously the Americas. But I think they're bringing in new sort of bits of legislation on that and increasing the penalty to bring it in from South America because of deforestation. So I think they're sourcing a lot of that now from North America now. But we used to have it here, but we don't really see much of it because it comes in sort of 40,000 ton ships. And it used to be transshipped here in smaller vessels, but we don't really see a lot of that now. So. But most of it is from the UK and around the Rotterdam area, France and sort of the Baltics. Also the UK, we get a lot in from Erith, like our rape meal comes in from Erith up in London, so around that sort of area. So we get a lot from the UK as well.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I was just wondering was, has there been many hold-ups in terms of things coming in and out, sort of with any documentation, new kind of checks and things like that? or is things sort of, you know, going quite smoothly for you?
Yeah, I mean, when we came out of Europe, we were worried down here because obviously the paperwork trail was a lot less. But ABP in general are used to dealing with, you know, customs paperwork and things coming in from outside of Europe and obviously exporting to Asia and around that area. So it was certainly something that ABP was set up to do. But actually here it's pretty good. We've got a computer system that automatically now connects with customs. Yeah, it's literally a flick of a switch. You just make sure the commodity's cleared, and then it's okay to discharge. So I'll be honest with you, we haven't really seen any holdups here at all.
Oh, that's good to know.
Everything should be cleared whilst it's coming across on the ship from Europe. And of course, if it's coming in from the UK, nothing's required.
Brilliant, thank you. I haven't got any more questions in the chat. I'm not sure if there's no hands up, so I think you might be free to go, Richard.
I will say,
I appreciate it.
just on the European side though, that what probably has changed is international catering waste. So even though the hazards haven't changed, we're not allowed international catering waste here. We're allowed packaging and stuff like that, but food waste from Europe, we're not allowed to take from ships anymore. So that's one thing that has affected the ships.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure
It's been a pleasure.
if you're happy, if we do have any more questions come up to us, then if you're happy for me, Rebecca or Naomi, to forward them to you, that I'd really appreciate that. So
absolutely no problem at all.
I really appreciate your time. Thanks. You're obviously welcome to stay and listen to our other speakers, but we won't blame you if you would like to get away home. You might come back with some nice questions.
I haven't done one of these before, by the way, but so I hope it was all right. It's a bit like talking to yourself. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, really, really good and really interesting. So thank you. Okay, Rebecca and Naomi, I'm not sure who's going next or whether you'll come as a pair, but if you are happy to share your screen, that would be lovely.
Thanks, Nikki. So I'm going to start off. My name's Naomi Osborne. I've been a Trading Standards Officer in the agriculture animal health teams as they've changed over the years for a very long time. So I currently work in our rural team with a few other people on this call, and we deal with all of the animal health and welfare and all of the agricultural complaints and inquiries and projects that Heart of the Southwest Trading Standards Service deals with. So Becky and I are lead officers for agriculture for Heart of the Southwest, and as to fit in with the theme of this webinar, we just wanted to talk just very briefly really about feed hygiene and why it's so important and why we get involved really. So this first slide really is just to sort of set the scene for anyone that doesn't know what it is when we talk about feed hygiene. So when we talk about feed, we're talking about any animal feed that is fed to livestock or in fact to pets as well. So the legislation that covers animal feed, that includes pet animals, and we have found certainly during COVID and since a massive growth in that industry, and particularly in people making pet treats at home and starting up businesses. So we've done a lot of education in that industry, and we continue to do that as well. Really, we've focused today on the livestock feed, so it fits in well with talking about imported feed. So feed is anything that we're feeding to animals. Hygiene is everything that we do around that to make sure that feed is safe for use, so that it's free from contamination. So we would expect anyone that deals with animal feed to have considered the risks to that feed being contaminated and have measures in place to make sure or limit the contamination and make sure that ultimately it's going to be safe when it's fed to the animals. So things that we would include in that would be like cleaning, so having proportionate to your business, making sure that your equipment is clean, that the storage is clean, that you're using the right sort of products, that those themselves don't contaminate the feed. Traceability is key, so you know where you're getting your ingredients from, or where you're getting the feed that you're transporting, or where you're getting the feed that you're feeding to your animals. And if you're a business that isn't at the end of the line, so isn't a farm, who you're supplying that feed to, so that you have full traceability of what feed you supply to all of your customers. Storage, so you're making sure the feed is stored in a way that it can't be contaminated, so it's away from any products of animal origin, it's away from fuels, oils, those are the obvious things. So if you do have other products on site, that you've really got a separate designated area that's going to make sure that the feed on your site is going to be safe the whole time. Who your suppliers are, so are they members of UFAS or other FEMAS, or TASC, other feed assurance schemes? You know, are they reputable, not just someone that's you know, selling something through social media, or has turned up at the farm or at the depot with a suspicious van load of animal feed. Sampling, that's something that we expect businesses to do, so that you keep a sample of every batch of animal feed that you're dealing with. So if anything went wrong with the feed, you can then get that tested as like a backup to see whether it is actually that batch or whether it's something else further up or down the feed chain. And all of these things, like I said, is basically risk assessing your business. So in the feed terms and food, then that's called HACCP, but Becky's going to go into a bit more detail about that in a minute. So the types of contamination, just quickly, the most common ones are diseases. So things like salmonella, or we found that for a few mills have had positive salmonella, so then you have to go back and have a look at where that could have come from and how you can stop that from happening again. We had a salmonella case quite widespread in the UK in mice that were being bred and then frozen and fed as pet food for snakes and other reptiles. And so that had to be dealt with across the nation. Other diseases could be or potentially TB. So if you have got feed on your farm, making sure you're storing it in a way that wildlife can't get to it, so there's no risk of it being contaminated that way. Molds, so again, it's all about your storage, making sure that you know, it's weatherproof, it's not getting too hot, it's not getting wet. And then other products, so where you're storing it, is it at risk of is it next to a fuel tank or cans of oil or other rubbish that is if they leaked, if one fell over and leaked, could it contaminate the feed? Or the wrong ingredients? Is there a risk there that you know, something you don't want to get into that batch of feed could happen? So again, it's about your storage, your traceability, having really good processes that are proportionate to your business. And our ultimate goal, and the FSA and the feed industry's ultimate goal, is that animal feed isn't going to cause any harm to the animals it's intended to, and further up for food producing animals, to the humans that are going to eat those animals. And the feed chain includes everybody, really, from everyone involved in feed. So from the big containers that are coming into Teignmouth with thousands of tons of feed ingredients, all the way through to the people that transport those feeds, to the storage areas that are holding on to it, to the mills that have the feeds as ingredients, to the feed merchants that are then storing it and selling it, all the way through to the final user on farm. And again, if it's pet food, then it's all the making sure you've got full traceability for all the ingredients that people are using to make those pet foods, all the way through to how it's stored at home and it's given to those pets. So that was just a little overview that hopefully sort of makes sense of why feed hygiene is important and why trading standards have an involvement there. And I'll just hand over to Becky.
I don't think I need to say anything else. Thank you, Noel. So I just put a slide here about the regulations, basically, which give us powers to go on and why we actually do what we do. There is some sort of retained EU legislation that we have, which is 183/2005. That sort of talks to us about why we do all the things that Naomi's just talked about, the requirements for feed hygiene and why those provisions are in place, and also then says to us we should monitor these processes and make sure that they are being adhered to, and also make sure that full traceability is there so we know that feed is safe, it's being kept and stored in hygienic conditions and produced in the correct way. So the regulation requires all feed businesses to be approved by the local authority. So that's either approval depending on the type of activity you're doing. So something like a pre-mixture or something high risk, that would be an approval, whereas most are registered. So farms would all be registered, and a lot of the activities that businesses are doing would be a registered activity with us. So it applies to all feed businesses, like Naomi said, at all stages of the production. So from primary production, so from farms where it's grown, all the way up to placing it on the market. So we have two types of premises that we kind of separate these into: primary premises and non-primary. So primary premises are farms, basically where the product is grown, where the animals are produced as well, mostly, but it does include fish farms and arable farms as well. What we're concentrating more tonight is the non-primary premises. So these are things like manufacturers, pet food manufacturers, and they can be big producers like your Forthglades or your Royal Canin, or it can be a small person just doing it in their kitchen, making a dog biscuit, or quite commonly now is rebagging products. So buying in bulk and then rebagging that into a smaller product and putting their name on it. That's quite a common thing that we have at the moment. But it does include distributors and stores, so selling products for food, anybody that sells products for food producing animals, and that does include horses. So that will be any of your feed merchants or places you would go to buy feed from, even if it's poultry feed. And a lot of pet shops now are selling that kind of thing. So traditionally we don't, or the legislation doesn't cover the pure retail of pet food, but it does if you're selling it for a food producing animal. So something like chickens, horses, they are caught because technically they are food producing animal, although we don't traditionally eat them in this country. It does also include rabbits as well. Again, something we don't eat in this country, but it would be caught under these regulations. And if they were selling that, we would be doing some low-level inspections on those as well. They would be expected to do the same things, but obviously the risk is all risk assessed, so depending on the risk of what they're doing. Includes transporters, and we've heard a bit about the task scheme that they most of them sign up to. Obviously importers, and we've had a great presentation from Richard about the ports, but also things that maybe people don't always realise, like co-producers. So your breweries, where they're producing their beer and then they have mash left over, that's often given away or sold to farms so that they can use that for their cattle or pigs as a way of topping up feed. And then surplus as well. So things like your supermarkets, where they have any surplus bakery products, they would go back usually to a main depot, and then they are distributed out to farms or their suppliers. We have to be, supermarkets are very, and surplus food is very highly regulated, because obviously we can't afford any cross-contamination. So it's really specific products that they are allowed to put back in to special bags. Sometimes it includes fruit and veg as well, but it has to have not come into contact with any animal proteins at all. So we have to be very careful in supermarkets generally, or anybody that's supplying a surplus has to be very careful about how that's stored and separated to go back to usually a big distribution place where they will recheck it before it can go out to farms. As I've just included there, you'll see a nice photo that was taken of Naomi and us at the port. So you can see in the background there, we're obviously wearing our full PPE, and a nice clean van that we had. So what does a inspection on a non-primary business involve? So we talked about this already, but it comes under the 183/2005, and it talks about having a written HACCP plan. So this again is about feed safety. It's about making sure that you can identify where the hazards could get into storage of feed or manufacture of feed or distribution of feed. So thinking about what the process is that you go through. And I often say it's just common sense, really, but it's written down, common sense. So when you receive something, checking it, making sure the bags aren't split, and then having a plan of what you do if they are, whether you can rework them or whether you have to reject them if they're being brought into you as a distributor, or whether you can whether anything can happen with them at all. So it's having those procedures written down and thinking about all the hazards that could affect feed. If you're a manufacturer, obviously you're thinking more about what contaminate that on the way through. So you might have metal detectors and things like that. And then obviously sampling comes into it. It's quite a huge area, HACCP, but it can be quite simple as well. So it applies to everybody. So even when we're talking about those small people that are making pets products and treats, they still have to apply HACCP. And again, like I say, it's common sense really as to what you're doing, but it has to be written and you have to have really thought about it and go through a procedure of what are all the hazards and identify them. And are there any critical control points within that procedure that I need to be aware of, and how am I going to manage those to make sure they don't affect the feed, or if they do, we can identify them and put it right. So the things that we look at when we're out on about doing our non-primary visits is like the facilities and equipment. Is it clean? Are there records to show that it's been cleaned regularly and kept well oiled and in good order, and it's being replaced as necessary? We're thinking about scales. If you're using any scales when you're doing your weighing out any product, are you having them calibrated? A service that we can provide is Trading Standards. There is officers within our service that do that, but also giving advice and guidance as to how you can, maybe if you're a smaller manufacturer, how you can sort of cope with that without having to have too much expense. There are other ways that we can assist with that. So it's looking at all those things, making sure personnel are trained, that they know what they're doing when they're carrying out the procedures, and also knowing exactly what their boundaries are of their job and having written procedures for those, mainly for bigger premises, but also even if you're on your own doing that, just knowing what your qualifications are and how you can apply those to what you're doing. We're looking at the production. We will usually walk in the production line, starting at raw material and coming to the end where it's been manufactured and bagged, and just watching and seeing the procedure as it happens. We're looking to make sure they've got quality control. Part of that going back to HACCP, but making sure that they're checking, every so often to make sure that the feed they're producing is the correct quality. Storage and transport, again, equally as important, because you don't want to go to all the expense of making a really great product and then not storing it in a really good way that it becomes contaminated, or not transporting it correctly. So you need to think about how you're going to store your product once it's been made into bulk or into bags, and then making sure you get it transported correctly, how long you can store it for and things. So we're looking at the whole process when we go out. We're talking about record keeping, traceability, really, really important for what we're looking for here. Seeing it from the beginning to the end, making sure the records are all there so that we can follow the procedure. In case there's a problem, we come to complaints and product recall, knowing where the problem may have come in and being able to then deal with any complaints that you might receive and doing a recall of a product if that's necessary, and having the traceability to be able to assist you with that is really important. So all of this is laid down in Annex 2 of the regulations. And again, it's designed to make sure that feed is safe and it can be traced if there's a feed safety incident based at the end of the day. So some of the other things, so when you are placing on the market or producing and selling your own product and you want to put your name on it, then we have to think about labeling as well. And that's quite a high priority for us when we're out and about, is how you've labeled your product and making sure that it's when you've labeled it, that it's actually correct, the presentation's correct, and the packaging requirements and any declarations that you're making on that product are correct, that you're not saying it does something that it doesn't do, that you're not making any medicinal claims, because they come under the Vet Meds Directorate. So there's certain words and terms you cannot use, and you can't show that in a picture either. So even if you don't say it, you can't show that something that somebody might pick up and think that would do something that it doesn't do. So you can't make any medicinal claims. There are other words you can use to say your product might assist or support in a product, but you must be very careful about those claims. And we look at labelling as much as we look at the rest of the process to make sure that it is clear, that claims are substantiated, especially nutritional claims as well, and making sure that it's not misleading to the purchaser, that what they're buying is they understand is what they're going to get. There are a lot of supplements on the market nowadays that can claim to do lots of different things. And they are all fine as long as they can be substantiated. So they've got either a holistic vet maybe on board, or they've done extensive research to say that it can do some of those activities. But again, it would be you have to be very careful about the claim you make, that it doesn't then fall into a medicinal claim. And there's good guidance online if you're ever thinking about making a product that is more of a support product. There are lots of guidance about the words you can and can't use, and especially how you sort of depict that in a picture as well. So it's really important to engage with us as well. As much as we go out and do these visits, we're always happy to receive people ask us for advice before they go ahead and make a product or develop a label, so that we can advise what's best and how you can, if that's correct or not. So we're always happy to help and advise on those, and that can become part of the visit if we come out to do a non-primary visit as well. So I think it's back over to you now, Naomi. You're on mute.
Hello, sorry about that. So what I should have put at the top of this slide is what happens when things go wrong, or what happens when you don't know what to do. Because like Becky has just said, we would always rather people came to us first off with an idea and found out what they could and couldn't do. We have a wealth of business support and experience in this area, like we do with all of Trading Standards, and we're a business support service. We're very keen to help businesses to set up and be compliant and get going right from the beginning, rather than just have a crack, go in blind and then fall foul of the rules and regs. So number one is advice and guidance. So if someone wasn't sure what they were doing, or if we were on a visit and we found some problems, then we will always help that business. We will work with the business to help them rectify those issues. That could involve sitting down and helping them put a HACCP together. It could involve giving some really clear practical advice on some storage, or how to set up a suitable cleaning procedure. It could involve a revisit, so a timeline to rectify some problems, and then we will come back and make sure that they understand everything's okay, and they understand where they're going after that. And that sort of leads into number two, which is business support. We work with loads of other agencies and projects that can, if it's not something that we can help you with, then we can signpost and put you in touch with other people that probably can. I mean, the Southwest, the Heart of Southwest Growth Hub are super helpful. They've got, lots of staff there that understand agricultural businesses, and there is loads of different support that's available, and that could be setting up a suitable IT system. It could be looking for some possible grants or funding opportunities that are there. Again, another one that Nikki and Sam have done lots of work with, and with this project, is the Business Information Point. They're very helpful, and again, they're there to support your business to be as efficient and productive as possible, whilst also being compliant. So loads of advice and guidance. So always come to us first so we can help. Our website's got loads of advice leaflets on there. Lots of links to other websites that can also help. So we will do loads of help, loads of advice. Then we have a few enforcement tools. So if things don't go to plan and people aren't able to to rectify issues and we have a feed safety incident, then that's our aim. Our aim is to our aim is to make sure that the animal feed is safe for animals and for humans. So it might be that we have to serve an improvement notice, which just makes the advice and guidance a bit more formal, and there'll be time limits there to get things sorted, and then that would be us coming back to make sure that's been done, or photos being sent in, just to try and motivate and focus, or an emergency prohibition. So if we went somewhere where there was a real serious safety risk, that we felt that production had to be shut down straight away, then that's what that would be used for. I'm not sure. I've never served one. I'm not sure that that's something that we would. That's it's a last resort, really, but it's tools that we have. Okay, I think, is there one more slide? I just wanted to talk about the different sort of registration and approval. So all businesses, I think it's been mentioned already, all businesses in the feed chain have to be registered with the local authority. The reason being is that we can, so that we're aware of how all of those businesses, so we can offer the right level of business support. Registration is free. It can be done through our website. You need to be registered because your registration number has to go on your website and your feed labels. And we would never just issue a registration number, possibly for a farm, but for a non-primary business, filling in that initial application form on our website, that then starts off the business support happening. So you'll get a phone call, an email, we talk about what your plans are, or it might be that you've already started, set something up and you've hit a stumbling block, but then we can get involved and we can, set you in the right direction and support you through that as well. Our main areas that we offer advice on are that there are in fact animal feed regulations. It's surprising the number of businesses that set up and are unaware that there's any sort of rules around animal feed. And then about the HACCP, so about that risk assessment, and about labelling and marketing, so what to put on a website, what sort of claims people make, what information has to be available on labels and declared on a website. And the registration is risk-based, so there are different classifications of registration depending on what activity the animal feed business does. A big mill that makes lots of different types of animal feed with lots of different ingredients coming from lots of different places, that's going to be a much higher risk than a feed merchant that is just selling on a few bags of poultry feed or horse feed that they don't make themselves. And then depending on the risk and depending on the level of compliance of that business, that then tells us how often we need to then visit those businesses to make sure that they're still trading okay, and again to discuss if there's any other business support we can help them with. Approval is a bit stricter. That's for businesses that either make or supply higher risk products, so vitamins, premixes, products that if there was an error in feeding, then there would be more harm or significant harm to the animals, so greater controls are needed over the manufacture and supply of those. Again, we are very much there to make that happen as long as the business can show that they've got all of those measures we've talked about in place, and they are clued up on what the regulations are and what their market is for the products that they want to be involved in. That will always involve a visit, and There is a cost involved for that, which is a set cost. And then we have a duty to let the FSA, the Food Standards Agency, know. And there is a list of all businesses that have an approval number, is then published on the Food Standards Agency website. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was the VMD, so the Veterinary Medicine Directorate. They're also involved in animal feed. So any animal feed that has a medicated ingredient is approved and inspected and monitored by the VMD, not the local authority. And that includes farms that use those products as well, so big poultry farms, pig farms, dairy farms. But we work very closely with the VMD and any other agency, so we would always join up visits and share information if we were helping a business to become compliant, and the VMD were also approving them at the same time. So that's all I think I wanted to say. I don't know if anyone has any questions at all.
Oh, thank you, Nom and Becky. That was brilliant. I think someone has put their hand up. Is that Robin? Hopefully you should be able to just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
fine.
Robin, yeah.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, really interesting talk. Question for you on animal feed. So I'm talking about bagged animal feed in a 20-kilo bag. So we get our animal feed from a local pet supplier and they buy it from a mill in the southwest. And what I'm thinking about is not animal feed that's a combination product like a pellet or a bunch of ingredients together. I'm thinking about something that is a single thing, single ingredient, and I'm thinking specifically about poultry corn. So I buy 20 kilo sacks of poultry corn, and pre-COVID and pre the war in Ukraine and pre the increase in the cost of living, a bag of poultry corn was a bag of poultry corn. It contained nothing else other than corn and the bag itself. And now it contains a very large quantity of chaff as well, so the husk, as well as the poultry corn. So the question is, when is a bag of poultry corn not a bag of poultry corn?
Well, that is a good question. And have you had that discussion with the place that you are getting the corn from?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I've even showed them. You know, they get it. You know, to their credit, they get it from a large animal mill in the southwest. It isn't Mole Valley, but it is a large one that you would know. And
does it declare anything else on the label then for it, or is it just say poultry corn?
It says poultry corn. And I think my concern is that, and I totally understand that they've done it to keep the cost of their product down, even though the cost of the bags has gone up, probably more than the cost of inflation since COVID. But, really, I think my point is that just from a representation point of view, it really isn't a bag of poultry corn anymore. It's mixed corn and corn-based product. It's wheat more than corn. And really, my question from a trading stance point of view is, when does it cease to become a 20-kilo sack of poultry corn? Because it isn't only a bag of poultry corn at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we can do sampling for if there's concern about a product and what it does contain or what it shouldn't contain, then we can take samples of that. So if you have it and you want to, we could come and take a sample from it and send it off to our public analyst to sort of see, and they can tell us what is actually in it. That would maybe be a starting block then to go to the company and say, actually, you're selling this as poultry corn, but it contains these other things that you're not declaring. We could start there, and that's probably where we would normally start with the product is let's sample it and see if there is anything in there that shouldn't be in there. or is there more of that than there is of what you're actually buying? So we could do that, and if you gave your if you wanted to give your details, we could certainly probably arrange to do that and come and just take an informal sample to start with of the product you've bought. And then it may be that we go to, if the supplier is somewhere within the south, in sort of Devon and Somerset, we may visit them anyway. They may be probably on our list of manufacturers, but we could certainly start there with it, Robin, and come and get a sample of your product. Or you could tell us where you bought it and we can go there. And if you'd rather not be included in the chain, we can go there and just sort of look at it directly from where you're sort of buying it from, however you'd like to go. And then we can see, well, what does it contain? And that's where we would start, really, is there too much of something else in there to still claim that it is corn?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, the team have got my email from the event registration, so maybe if they pass that on to you, and then you drop it off, and then I'll tell you the mill where I'd say, because I'm almost certain it's a local southwest mill. As I say, it isn't Mole Valley, but I'm sure you probably go there in any case. But I think
that's fine.
Clearly, it's perfectly safe. I feed it to my geese. It's perfectly safe for the geese to eat it. But it's not a question of safety. It's a question of representation. It clearly isn't as nutritious as it was once. And I'm not talking about a little bit of chaff. I'm talking about probably a quarter of a 20 kilo sack.
Yeah, that's why we could start with sampling. That's where we always start with things, and then we can see exactly what it is and then go back. I know Julie's putting in the chat that is it a compound feed, which is meaning, is it combined with something else? And they need to be labeling it differently, because if they're saying it's just a single feed material as corn, but actually it's containing other things, then there's a whole different labeling requirements there. So we will get the details from Nikki and Sam, and then we will contact you and we'll follow that through, and we can either, like I say, come to you directly, or we can have a private discussion about where you bought it, and we'll just go there and take a formal sample if necessary, and really get it, find out what is in it, and start from there, if that's okay.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much for your help. So it's been kind of bothering me for about 12 months.
Yeah, sure.
Started this really probably sort of 18 months ago. It obviously coincided with the war in Ukraine, and just the cost of inputs just going crazy.
And it doesn't have to be a safety issue necessarily for us to sample. It can be a composition thing, that you're buying one thing and you're not getting that. So we sample for all kinds of different reasons, and that's just one of them. So we can certainly look into that.
I'm just assuming that the chaff they're putting with the corn is the chaff that came with the corn. But are they buying in chaff from somewhere else and mixing it in with the corn? I don't know. Who knows?
Well, that's what we can try and hopefully find out.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Oh, thank you both. That was brilliant. Does anyone else have any questions? I know that a couple people have recently joined, so I don't know if anyone has anything extra that they would like to ask. You might be lucky, you two, and that you are. Oh, somebody's still typing. I'll just let Julie finish typing.
Julie, you are able to unmute yourself if you have any questions.
Oh no, she hasn't got.
No.
Oh.
Just a smiley face. Lovely.
Just a smiley face. That's fine. Okay. Well, that's really great. Thank you, everybody, for. I'm not sure if Richard's still on the call. Yes, he is. But thank you, Richard. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Naomi, for speaking this evening. We are really grateful for you taking your time this evening, because I know it is after work hours, so I really appreciate it. And if you're all three happy, obviously Robin's got the query that we're going to follow up, but if there is any questions that anyone has after this evening's webinar but wants to email me about it, or Sam, then we can pass that information on to you, if that's okay.
And just to confirm, Robin, I've passed on your email address to Becky and Nom, so someone from the service will get in contact with you.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thanks ever so much. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, well, I think we've just got sometimes we have a couple of closing slides.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not
me.
sure
Sorry.
if my glamorous assistant would like to pull those up. That would be amazing.
I was so enjoying the fact of not having slides to show. I forgot that I've got the
It's fine.
the end bit. Sorry.
And obviously, because we like to show this one each time, just because obviously Future Farm Resilience Project has kindly been funding these webinars in order to have them in order for them to happen via ourselves. So just a reminder, the funding is coming to an end. So if anybody is still wanting to sign up, this is some of the things that with signing up to the Future Farm Resilience Project that is available to you: transition workshops, one-to-one support, small group webinars, digital training and wellbeing workshops, which is one that we were running this evening. But if you do go onto the business information point, it gives you all the information there on how to sign up and register with them. And it also then gives you a calendar of events that are happening and things that are taking place. I'm not sure if we still have that slide, Sam. So there's some more details of some of the events that are coming up. The webinars are out of date now, Sam, aren't they? On the
down the side. It's just an example.
That is an example, yeah. So we're running a couple of webinars. We try and go for the first Thursday and the third Thursday of every month. We've got a couple left for November, and I'm going to do the first and second Thursday in December. We've got speakers from the Animal Plant Health Agency, NFU, and other support service charities that are willing to speak over the next couple of months. So as and when we get those people registered or signed up, we will make sure that we advertise it as we have been for people to log on to and register with us so that you can listen in. We also have an up and coming farm walk locally, so that will be the Thursday the 10th of October, and that's at a local farm in North Taunton on the outskirts of Oakhampton in Devon. It's a daytime event, and we have a speaker from the Forestry Commission who's going to talk to us about farm diversity, woodland, set aside woodland areas, and some of the land management schemes that are available. We've also got an agricultural advisor that will be present. We're hoping to have the rural crime team, and obviously myself and Sam will be there bringing the rural support stand along with all the different charities that come with that, and also we'll be there to answer any questions relating to the trading standards side of things. So yeah, you sign up via Eventbrite like we do with the webinars, and there will be, which is probably the most important thing to mention, that there will be some refreshments on the day, so you'll get a nice some nice food and drink after the walk while we all can network in one of his barns. So we're hoping for some really good weather as well, so it'd be really great if we can see a couple or all of you there. That would be super. But I think that's it really. These are the agricultural agri events that are still are coming up as well with the business information team. 5th of October, 10th of October, 24th of October, and I think you can just sign up through the Eventbrite links as with all the other events we do. And just a final slide about the Hub of Hope. Myself and Sam always try and share this one as well. It's obviously a support website that you can log on to. So anywhere in the country, it will give you some information about the charities and support services that are available to you in your postcode area that you're in, because things do vary from Cornwall to Somerset to Devon, and obviously further up the country. So by just popping in your postcode of where you are and a particular topic or subject of support service that you're needing, that can then give you within a mile radius of what sort of services are available to you. And I think that's it. Thank you for attending, and like I said before, if you have any queries or questions, you're very welcome to get in contact with us either via the team email there or the email address that we shared earlier for myself and Sam. So thank you very much for the evening.